We got my nigga Matty Balls on some shit, boy. Matty Balls. Rappers who switched genres and failed. You feel me? Shout my nigga Matty Balls. Chad, y'all know some rappers that switched genres and failed? I know some rappers that have switched genres that actually was kind of successful off it. Shit. Foden say he ready to get up out of here. Oh, Foden. All right, but let's get into this shit though, boy. Who switched some genres though? Like real shit. I'm trying to see who. Chopper switched genres. But he technically didn't fail. It just didn't really go nowhere, if that makes sense. I don't know.
I've seen many rappers successfully switch genres, making an album in a completely different style. A lot of these rappers have done so very successfully and have been well received. However, there are a select few that haven't. And when they failed pretty hard. So today we are going to be looking into rappers who switched genres and then failed, starting off with Lil Wayne. Also, real quickly, I just need to say something. I'm going to alter the footage so the 12-year-olds out there.
Lil Wayne? Was X. Facts. X switched genre and said he was successful, fo. Yes, that's true. But damn, Lil Wayne?
I can understand. Just because you don't like Machine Gun Kelly does not mean he failed when he switched to his emo rock. I don't like his music either, but he pulls in crazy numbers, so please do not comment that he failed. So now that we got that out of the way, let's continue with the video.
Hell no.
The year is 2009.
You don't give a fuck about Mac Miller? Hey man, look, don't let Mac Miller, but me personally, I ain't listen to Mac Miller, so I can see what you were saying.
Just recently released his iconic album, The Carter
Chad
3.
Wayne,
he was
go!
a decade and 5 studio albums into his career and had already seen a ton of success. Wayne had released tons of mixtapes and sold millions of copies of his.
Hold on, though. Wayne was doing like kind of like emo type rock rap, wasn't he? He was doing that
albums.
Shit.
He was actually putting out so much music that people criticized him, with 50 Cent saying, "A whore sleeps with whoever will pay him. So we gotta call him a whore if he'll just go with whoever pay him to be on their records." Regardless, by the time he released The Carter 3, he was a pretty big deal. But after he released it, he rose to new levels. The Carter 3 was heavily anticipated, especially because of the success of its predecessors, and it was also highly anticipated because one of Wayne's DJs actually leaked a lot of the original songs, leading Wayne to just release them on an EP called The Leak and remake a lot of the songs for The Carter 3. The leaks the fans heard and all of the drama surrounding the album just helped build hype for the project. So when The Carter 3 released in 2008, it was extremely successful, selling over 1 million copies in its first week. On the first day alone, he sold 432,000 copies. The album won 3 Grammys, 1 for Best Rap Album, 1 for Best Rap Performance, and 1 for Best Rap Song. Critics loved the album as well, with Rolling Stone putting it on their 500 greatest albums of all time list, and Billboard putting it on their top 200 albums of the decade list. By 2020, The Carter 3 was certified 6 times platinum. Lil Wayne was on top of the world, with a lot of people considering him the greatest rapper at the time. So I'm sure you can imagine how much of a surprise it was for people when, after rapping his ass off for almost a decade and releasing one of the most successful albums of the 2000s, Lil Wayne followed up with a rock album. Producers Cool and Dre said that following the more experimental songs Phone Home and The Carter 3, they thought that Wayne could explore different sounds, which opened up the possibility of a rock album. Wayne had foreshadowed a rock album before, as he was a huge fan of the genre, and he said in particular he really liked Nirvana. He'd also collaborated with Weezer on the song
I fought with Nirvana too. Shout out Nirvana on Phone Gray. I listened to a lot of rock growing up. Motherfuckers used to clown me, especially in the trenches. Motherfuckers used to get on my ass like, damn, boy, what the fuck you doing? I love rock music, boy. You feel me? Still
Can't Stop Partying right before the release of his rock album. Still, understandably so, people were shocked at the complete genre change that Lil Wayne did. It didn't help that Lil Wayne himself said the album was originally going to be leftover songs from the Carter 3 studio sessions. Even some of the producers that worked with him on the project, Infamous and Drew Correa, were shocked. Correa said, "We thought he was joking," and Infamous said, "There were rumors Wayne was working on a rock album, but I assumed it was just 808 drums."
Nah, gang, I don't know no Jersey rappers. I don't think I know one. One Jersey rap I know is what, Fetty Wap?
With guitars on it. But that night when we worked on the track, Wayne said that he wanted lots of drums, bass, and guitars. Drew started to add organs, and Wayne said no. That's when I realized it was going to be a real rock album. Lil Wayne said in an interview with Billboard, "I don't want people to think I'm trying to do something I can't do. Don't think you're going to put the album on and hear me screaming and singing." He went on to say that he has no limits on this album and that he's just having fun. So after releasing the singles Prom Queen, On Fire, and Drop the World, he released the album Rebirth in February of 2010. The only hip-hop track on the
dollars to react to that ass XX freestyle. I did. I react to the cypher actually. Dropped today. I did. It was about It was about I don't. It was. It was what it was.
The album was Drop the World with Eminem, which was a very successful song. The rest of the album, however, was received very poorly. It did alright commercially, selling 176,000 copies.
That's not bad.
Although I'm gonna assume that most people were just checking it out because it was Lil Wayne, and they probably weren't giving it too many more spins. In comparison to his previous album's million first week sales, it wasn't great. I listened to the album, and I can't say it was that good. I could see why maybe if you're a Lil Wayne fan, you enjoyed it.
I'm telling you, XXL ain't never gonna be the same, man. Ever. XXL fell off so fucking bad, man. None's ever gonna top 2016. None. I don't know.
But
what
critics
the fuck
absolutely
happened.
Tore this album apart with tons of negative reviews from every single outlet, and to this day, it's his worst reviewed album. Anthony Fantano even put it on his 15 worst albums of the 2010s list.
Lil Wayne with Rebirth, which should not have been a birth at all, really should have been an abortion.
Rebirth also resulted in this infamous guitar solo from Lil Wayne. The guitar solo wasn't great, with one of the top comments being, "I come back here when I feel like quitting the guitar." And although this album was received very poorly and most people didn't really enjoy it, he bounced back almost immediately the next year when he released the Carter 4, selling nearly 1 million copies first week. So it's clear that after Rebirth was sandwiched in between 2 albums from his The Carter series.
I listen to R&B, of course, gang. I engage, I indulge in a little R&B on some shit, boy. R&B, hip hop, rock, all type of shit.
Lil Wayne's attempt at rock and roll wasn't too successful. However, on the flip side, even though this album wasn't very successful, a lot of people argue that it did open doors for many artists to come. It's no secret that Lil Wayne is a huge influence to rappers nowadays, with popular artists like Lil Uzi Vert, who just ventured into rock on their latest album, saying that Lil Wayne is one of their biggest influences.
I learned Lil Wayne. I wanted to be Lil Wayne. I would talk when I was
J. Breezy. Yeah, I know who J. Breezy is. He's from Jacksonville, right?
Another artist that was influenced by Wayne was Trippie Redd. So just because Rebirth didn't go over so well, Wayne has inspired an entire generation of rappers who want to experiment with other genres. This is actually the argument that Complex made recently to suggest that Rebirth was a good album, although I think most people would disagree with that. And even though Rebirth didn't go over so well, Lil Wayne said himself he was just having fun, and that's all that matters at the end of the day.
True. Logic.
In 2019, Logic released his book Supermarket, which actually made him the first rapper to have a New York Times #1 best-selling book. But the issue wasn't that he dove into the genre of literature. It was the accompanying soundtrack that dove into the genres of rock and pop. In 2019, Logic wasn't in the best spot of his career. He had been under a lot of scrutiny and was going to be under even more following his next 2 projects. Logic has always been scrutinized in the rap game for his biracialness and how often he would pull inspiration from his influences. However, he still did have some talent and made some pretty good albums like Under Pressure, The Incredible True Story, and others. Logic made himself much more easy to hate after releasing the album Everybody in 2017, which contained tons of lines about his biracialness and just plenty of other corny stuff. Before releasing the album, Logic said, "It's about me being black and white, seeing light from 2 different sides." It was his most successful album and gave him his biggest song to date, a song about mental illness. But this song was also subject to much criticism for being bland despite having a good message. On top of that, many people viewed it as corny, which didn't help Logic's image. Then in 2018, after tons of people were making fun of Logic for how often he brings up being biracial, he finally...
Oh yeah, because that is like Logic's whole thing. That's the only thing he always brings up. Like he keeps bringing about, Why the fuck can I not talk today? What the fuck is going on? He always brings up him about being biracial. Goddamn. Damn. He the best rapper to be in the NBA.
Finally snapped on the remix of Royce da 5'9"
What's his
song
real name?
Halfway through his verse, all
I ain't
of
gonna
which
lie,
he
Damian
just
Lillard
spent
the
rapping
best
about
rapper.
how he wants to be a good person and promote equality.
What's it
He
like
kind of
being
just
a white
stops
rapper?
rapping and starts talking.
It's so great being a white rapper. White, everything.
Honestly, I feel pretty bad for Royce.
White, everything. Miles Bridges. Oh, I know Miles Bridges.
Logic turned this
I know
in
Miles
because
Bridges.
if
I
he
know
put it
that
on the
nigga.
song, he probably
Does
didn't
he
want to
still
be
play
mean
in the
and say,
NBA?
no, this isn't good, but it just had to have been so
I would think he
awkward.
do.
So
That nigga
Royce
was, like,
released
drinking
it,
lean
and
all
it was
type of
terrible,
shit.
and it became a huge meme. On top of that track, Logic released 2 more albums that both contain some fairly mediocre lyrics and lackluster music compared to what Logic is capable of. But in 2019, Logic would make it a million times easier to hate on him. Like I said, Logic released his book Supermarket in early 2019, and it was accompanied with a rock/pop soundtrack. The book, from what I've seen online, was alright, but the soundtrack wasn't great. To be very real with you guys, I personally didn't mind this project all that much, but critics tore Logic a new one in their reviews. As Paige Stern from WRBB Radio says, the musician's work, which is usually considered rap, takes a complete 180 as he turns over to producing post-1960s boy band love song sounds. To get an idea of the sound, he had production on 2 tracks from Mac DeMarco and explored pop rock and synth rock and all sorts of other sounds. A lot of critics said Logic couldn't sing, and they also critiqued how he seemingly copies artists like Mac DeMarco, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and does a lame Tribe Called Quest interpolation and a Just a Friend interpolation. On top of that, the lyrical content wasn't great. It follows this story of some guy who's in love with this girl who works at a supermarket, and it comes off pretty weird. Like on the title track where he says, "I'm a weirdo, I'm a freak, I wish I could watch you when you sleep. I knew you before you knew me. Holy shit, I am a creep.
No.
I come to your job just to buy some shit I don't need."
Yeah,
Pitchfork even said, "Supermarket is a painful journey across guitar music over the past 5 decades and makes Lil Wayne's Rebirth look well thought out in comparison." Rolling Stone doubled down on that sentiment, saying, "It has more in common with Lil Wayne's Rebirth and Kid Cudi's Speed and Bullet to Heaven, both disastrous rock experiments carried out by established rappers that today serve as cautionary tales." YouTube critics like Sean C. tore this album apart as well.
Keep getting album after album after album, and they've just progressively gotten worse and worse and worse.
Damn.
Until we come to 2019,
Shout
where
out
he's
Sean
dropped
C.
2 of the worst albums in the same year.
Anthony Fantano also included this album on his worst albums of the 2010s list.
You know, some albums really make you sit there and reflect, God, what was he thinking? Just like this one. God, what was he thinking?
Supermarket peaked at number 56 on the Billboard 200 and sold about 12,000 copies first week, which is pretty poor in comparison to his previous album, Young Sinatra 4, which debuted at 2 on the Billboard charts and sold 122,000 copies first week. To be entirely fair to Logic, it was a soundtrack that was accompanying his book, so it wasn't promoted as much as a regular album would be. Following Supermarket, Logic
Oh, he's talking about
continued to dig
Logic?
a deeper
Or the
hole
nigga
for
that's
himself
making
in
the
his
video?
career, especially with the release of the album Confessions of a Dangerous Mind that same year. It was regarded as one of Logic's worst albums, if not his worst. I'm pretty sure that and Supermarket are neck and neck for that title. Even with all of that hate that Confessions garnered, it still sold 80,000 copies first week, which is about 7 times more than what Supermarket sold. So it's pretty obvious that Logic's venture into rock music wasn't too successful.
Oh, well, this Matty Balls.
In January of 2011, Kid Cudi took to Twitter to announce that he was releasing a
Yo, I don't listen to Kid Cudi. What's Kid Cudi's most popular song? Have I ever heard a song by Kid
rock
Cudi?
album called Wizard, alongside his close friend and collaborator, Dot the Genius. After a year of teasing, promo,
Ice
and
Basketball?
announcing a tour, Kid Cudi
Yes.
and Dot the Genius released their rock album Wizard in February of 2012. The album debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 charts, sold 66,000 copies first week, and debuted on both the rock album and alternative albums charts as number 1. For Kid Cudi's first venture into rock music, it was fairly successful. However, it would foreshadow something much worse. You have to remember that in 2012, when Cudi released Wizard, he was coming off of one of the biggest peaks of his career. He had worked with Kanye.
Hey, I know who Cam Wilder is, but I don't watch his ass though. I watch Cam Wilder. Shout Cam Wilder though. He cool. You feel me? Big tall ass light skinned.
On 808s and Heartbreak, released his hit single Day and Night, and had also released his classic album Man on the Moon 1. He was headlining festivals, collaborating with big artists.
Yo, I'll still never forget when they really booed this nigga Kid Cudi off stage doing his rollout performance, because was it like Kanye fans that booed this nigga and was throwing shit at him? I remember that shit, boy.
Large brands. So it makes sense as to why he was able to experiment with sounds like he did on Wizard and still get support from his fans. However, by 2015, Cudi was in a rough place. 5 years prior, he released Man on the Moon 2, so fans were patiently waiting for the 3rd installment. He had been teasing it for years, but ended up releasing multiple albums before it. Cudi also said that his 2015 album, Satellite Flight, The Journey to Mother Moon, would be a prelude to the 3rd Man on the Moon album. So when he said he was going to drop yet another album before that, fans were pretty disappointed. He was also dealing with a lot of mental health issues, which caused him to fall into drug use. So he made an album about it and released it in December of 2015, and that album was called Speed and Bullet to Heaven. This album was, like Wizard, a full-on rock album. However, unlike Wizard and a couple of songs...
Okay, so I think I'm starting to notice a pattern here. Okay, so it's like almost every rapper he done named off this list, every time they like switch to like rock, they end up failing. So I say like a lot of rappers should stay away from the pop rock like genre if you ain't, you see what I'm saying? Well, Ooh, man.
songs on Satellite Flight. Speeding Bullet to Heaven wasn't as good, wasn't well received, didn't do well commercially, and had extremely dark lyrics. Cudi himself has said that Speeding Bullet to Heaven was a cry for help. I was literally screaming out to the world that I was hurting deeply and just wanted so badly to be understood. Unfortunately though, his screams didn't sound too good and it was poorly reviewed by critics. Complex said, Speeding Bullet to Heaven is raw, grating, and at times unpleasant to listen to. This is for a few reasons. The music was alright, but Cudi sounded awkward on a handful of songs, and because of the terribly dark lyrics throughout the album, it was really awkward for the majority of people to listen to. Oh, and there were these really annoying Beavis and Butthead skits throughout the entire project. I get why he put it in there because it like ties into his life in certain ways, but it's pretty annoying to hear frequently throughout the album. It was even weirder when Beavis didn't like the songs and a narrator had to tell him why he should like them in defense of Cudi, as if Cudi was preparing the listener to not like the songs and then having to explain to them why they should like it. Another critic for Pitchfork said, while his diehard fans await his long-delayed Man on the Moon 3, Kid Cudi opted instead to release a 90-minute double-disc rock album. Unfiltered, unpolished, and uncomfortable, this album is a failure and not even a noble one. And I think that is a good summary of the album. The A-side was 18 tracks, and the B-side was 8 extra tracks full of demos and outtakes, which were even worse than the main album. Also, I gotta say, the album cover sucks. And the majority of his fans were not fans of this album.
Yo, chill, bro.
No, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. I can't do it. This is the end of the fucking reaction video.
I feel like these are like the average Kid Cudi fans. No offense, though.
I'm coming to my fucking verdict right now. I don't even need to listen to the rest of this shit.
Speeding Bullet to Heaven debuted at 36 on the Billboard 200 and sold about 20,000 copies first week, which was much worse compared to his first rock project, Wizard. Every album he released following this one has performed way better. On the flip side though, a lot of artists like A$AP Rocky, Erykah Badu, and Kanye West all said that they liked it, so I guess that's a good thing. And to be entirely fair to Cudi, it probably wasn't meant to be a commercial success or anything like that, since it was such a raw album coming from a real dark place, but since then he has not done any more rock albums. The weird thing about this album is that it has gained a small but mighty cult following over the years of people who defend this album as Cudi was being very raw and real on the project. However, those fans are in the minority. Speeding Bullet to Heaven overall was a commercial and critical failure, but this didn't ruin Cudi's career or anything, as a few years later he would drop one of his best albums ever with Kanye West, and he would drop more great music following that. To be honest, no one in this video has ruined their careers by experimenting with other genres. All of them are still to this day successful, except for this next guy.
Vanilla
To be fair to Vanilla Ice, he was destined for failure whether or not he remained in rap. If you guys don't remember Vanilla Ice, he's the guy who made Ice Ice Baby. Ice Ice Baby was a huge hit in the early 90s, and it also generated a ton of controversy. It was one of his earliest songs, featured on his debut album from 1989.
I guess he's the nigga that made Ice Ice Baby. Ice Ice Baby. Well, that's probably, this is really the only song I know about this nigga.
So he didn't have much of a foundation for his extreme success. It was actually the first hip-hop song to reach #1 on the Billboard charts, and there was a lot of controversy surrounding the song, as he did sample Queen's Under Pressure, and the song relied heavily on that sample, as Vanilla Ice didn't really bring much else to the table. Queen and David Bowie weren't even credited for the sample, so it made a lot of people angry. For a brief period of time, he even tried denying the fact that it was a sample.
We sampled them from him, but it's not the same bass line.
Wonder, a super one-hit wonder.
Like it goes ding 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 diggy ding ding. Ding 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 diggy ding.
Nigga chisel like a motherfucker.
That's the way theirs goes. Ours goes ding 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 diggy ding ding. Ding, 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 ding.
However, it was catchy and commercially appealing, so he did get a lot of attention. Vanilla Ice followed up the success of Ice Ice Baby with his major label debut album, To the Extreme. It became the fastest selling hip-hop album of all time, spent 16 weeks at #1 on the Billboard 200, and sold over 10 million copies. Vanilla Ice's success out of the gate was crazy, but there were a lot of underlying issues. A lot of people saw Vanilla Ice as more of a novelty act rather than an actual rapper. Eminem even said that when he first heard Ice Ice Baby, he didn't want to rap anymore. A lot of rap fans also probably felt like he was a fraud, as he was seeing all of the success as a mediocre white rapper, likely viewing him as a culture vulture. People grew tired of Vanilla Ice quickly, and plenty of people already didn't like him, so he began to fall off. The next album he released was Mind Blowin', which absolutely flopped compared to his last album. It didn't chart, and it only sold 42,000 copies. Vanilla Ice himself even blamed this on the fact that he went too mainstream, doing movies and making poppier songs songs rather than his more underground style of rap. Regardless, he was in a rough spot. It's possible that Vanilla Ice thought he could find a new fan base in a new genre, so he attempted to make a metal album. He teamed up with the producer Ross Robinson, who had worked with bands like Korn, Slipknot, and Limp Bizkit, and they began working on a metal album. A lot of people were very surprised he was doing this, understandably so. Some people probably weren't aware that he was also a member of the band Pickin' Scabs for a brief period of time, but it didn't work out too well, so he left. Anyways, Vanilla Ice and Ross Robinson kept working and released the album Hard to Swallow in October of 1998. It was influenced by a very dark period in his life that involved heavy drug use, similar to Kid Cudi's Speed and Bullet to Heaven. Also, like Cudi,
So
he
like
wanted
I
to
said,
express
don't make an
himself
album
in a
about
way
your
that he
drug
didn't think he
use
couldn't
or
rap,
motherfucking.
so he
Just
made
don't make a rock album.
I've listened to the album and I
anytime
don't
you
think
do,
it was that great. His vocals
motherfuckers
were
be-
okay
you
on
feel
some of the
me?
songs and some of the music was solid, but it seemed like no one was interested in even checking out a Vanilla Ice new metal album. The album failed to chart and sold a few more copies than his previous
That's
flop,
what I mean by God
but
spoke
nothing
to me.
noteworthy. Critics didn't like the album either, with it landing on a couple worst album of all time lists and on the AV Club's list of the least essential albums of the 90s. The most successful song on this album was Too Cold, which was just a rock remake of his song Ice Ice Baby. After this, he was dropped from his label, didn't work with Robinson again, and the greater metal community stayed away from him. But it wasn't a complete failure. My theory that he wanted a new fan base proved to be true, and it did work a little bit. He was able to go tour and get a slightly different fan base, although it was still pretty small. Vanilla Ice even said, "Now my crowd is the body piercing and tattoo crowd." So to be honest, in my opinion, I don't think that the failure of this album
can't
was
put no
really
links
because of the
tonight?
quality
Oh,
of the
no,
music.
gang.
I think it was more so
Nah,
just
you
because
can't put no
people
links.
didn't care about Vanilla.
Because for some reason, this Nightbot shit, I try to take that shit. I keep forgetting to take that shit off, but if you try to send a link, I'll just look it up, gang. Don't worry about it.
Ice anymore. In 2001, he tried another rap rock album.
Remind me to take that shit off. Because that should be annoying me that motherfuckers can't send links through my chat.
Called Bipolar,
Nightbot K.
which again flopped
Facts.
and was mocked by critics. A sales rep for Sony even
I gotta
said that
fix
the
that shit
sales
off
for
stream,
Bipolar
man.
were not bad for Vanilla Ice. The most success that Vanilla Ice has seen after Ice Ice Baby is getting a stand named after him in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It's like the third thing that pops up on Google when
Wow. That's actually, it's not that bad.
you type his name in. So like everyone else on this list, the genre switch did not work out for Vanilla Ice in the long run. But yeah, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, please make sure to leave a like down below. I had to listen to all of these bad albums and they weren't good. So because I put myself through that, I think I deserve a like. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.
Shout out Matty Balls, man.